Today, I'm speaking to Lynn Rae, an author and mental health care advocate who will share with us what it's like to live with bipolar and depression. Welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Break podcast. Hi, I'm Dr. Nafisa Sikandri, a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in anxiety-based disorders. I created the Mental Health Break podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you prioritize your mental health. Mental illness can cost you time and money. Ignoring your symptoms will only make the problems worse. Taking time out of your busy day to dedicate to improving your mental health can lead to long-term health and wellness. If you want to improve your life, regain control of your mental health, and feel empowered, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transforming OCD course. Get to the root of your OCD and regain control of your life from unwanted and intrusive thoughts that create irrational thoughts and fears in your life. Watch my free virtual training by visiting transforminganxiety.com/OCD training. I'm so excited to talk to Lynn Rae about her struggle living with depression and bipolar. Let me briefly introduce her before I bring her on. Lynn Rae was diagnosed with depression at the age of 30 and bipolar disorder at the age of 35. She has been living with these illnesses since 1991 and has had numerous hospitalizations. Two psychiatrists told her at the age of 39 she would never work full-time again. She has proven them wrong. She is the author of two books, the F book, aka 7 F's to Creating Your Fantastic Future, and My Journey Back to Myself. Lynn Rae lives in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada. Hi, Lynn. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Yes, today we are going to talk about your experience about having bipolar since 1991 and that you were told not by one but two doctors that you'll never work. You'll be so incapacitated that you will never work full-time again, right?
I wasn't told that till a few years later, but yes, I was told that.
So over the years, you've had the experience of doctors telling you that you're so incapacitated that you will never work full-time again, right? Can
That's true.
Share your
Yes.
experience a little bit with us and how it started and what led to that statement?
Well, it started as major depression in 1991. I was crying every day and didn't seem to know why. Tears would come down my face for seemingly no reason. So I went to my doctor, and my family doctor, he said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with you." So I found another doctor, and she sent me to a psychiatrist, and he said I had major depression. I was put on antidepressants, which I took for about 4 years. And then I stopped taking them because they were giving me too much energy. I couldn't sit still. And that's when I had my first major breakdown and ended up in the hospital in 1995. And it was a year later when I ended up in the hospital again that I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. It's the kind of illness they have to look at your history, and it can't be diagnosed with a blood test like physical illnesses can. It's more through observing my ups and downs in my mood that they decided I had bipolar disorder.
So for those that don't know what that is and somebody that actually has experience with it, can you explain how much of your diagnosis is similar to the DSM and how much of your experience has differed from that? Like, what are your experiences with bipolar and what's your understanding of it? And if you can explain to us what it looks like and what people can look for if they might think that they might have bipolar as well.
Well, with bipolar disorder, you have major mood swings. The lows are called depression. I'm sure everybody can relate a little bit to what that is. But the highs are called mania or hypomania, where you just feel so good. You feel like you're invincible. You go on crazy spending sprees. You will hallucinate. You get psychotic and paranoid sometimes. And it's really a scary place to be because you don't understand what's going on, especially the first time it happened to me. I was saying the truth shall set you free over and over again, and I couldn't stop saying it. And I know I hallucinated things that I wouldn't normally see. I call them spirit guides now, but I saw strange things like two people at the library. When I walked towards them, they just disappeared. Like I said, hallucinations are very scary. And when you're manic, I don't know how else to describe it. You're just on this high where you think you're invincible and nothing can harm you and you know more than other people. You feel almost like you're very close to God in a way, that you're getting messages from the universe all the time and you don't understand them. I'm not sure how else I can describe the mania and hypomania for you.
So you said that there's mood swings between the severe depression and then feeling high and almost out of touch with reality, right? Sometimes having
Yes.
hallucinations and not being able to be in touch with reality. What's the span of time between the low lows and the high highs? What was it for you, and what's common and typical?
Well, what I discovered is for every week of mania, I would be depressed for a month after. Normally, I'd get hypomanic and then it would climb to mania. And that time span would last about 6 weeks. So I would be severely depressed for 6 months afterwards. And I mean severely depressed, where I had no energy. I didn't want to go on with my life. I didn't care about Christmas. I couldn't take care of my kids. I would be in tears all the time. So yeah, like I said, for every week of mania, you can expect about a month of depression afterwards.
While you were in your depressed state, were you able to look forward to the mania, or when you were in that dark space, you thought you would never get out of it?
Oh, I thought I'd never get out of it. I didn't look forward to mania because I knew that I was out of touch with reality when I was manic, and I didn't want to go through that again. But I went through that about 7 times over a 10-year period.
So at what point did you start healing your journey, or feeling like you had some grasp on actually getting out of this?
Okay, at my third hospitalization in 1997, the nurses and doctors recognized that my marriage was part of the problem, and they helped me see that for myself by asking me questions. And when they asked me how my marriage was, I hesitated for about 3 seconds and replied, fine. And as soon as I said fine, I could feel some sort of movement or shifting right here in my brain. And for some reason, I knew I told a lie, and I had to leave my marriage before it destroyed me anymore. And I just want to say, my marriage, we were just like oil and water. We didn't mix. It wasn't a good combination for us. But, neither one of us wanted to give up on it. But when that happened, I knew I couldn't find happiness within my marriage. I tried doing volunteer work, going back to work part-time. I tried everything I could within my marriage to be happy, and I couldn't find that happiness that I experienced as a teenager. So I thought, okay, I've got to leave my marriage and see if I can find happiness. And that's the day I pulled out of our driveway, my shoulders completely relaxed. And I just said, thank you. That's all I need to know. I knew that was a sign that I was finally making the right decision.
So do you think that your unhappiness in your marriage triggered that initial sense of depression and then the mania?
I believe so. Like, we have genes that predispose us to the illness, of course, but I believe depression happened over a long period of time of 10 years. And I didn't talk about my feelings back then. I wasn't very assertive. I just stuffed everything. They say depression is anger turned inward.
Yeah.
I believe that was the case with me.
Did you have a history of depression before your marriage?
No, I was happy, content. I had lots of friends as a teenager. I was always out doing things, going to dances with my friends, but I gave my friends and dancing up when I met my husband. And
Mm.
now you shouldn't have to change your life completely for anyone. Now, I think he made changes too to make our relationship work. So there are two people not being honest with ourselves. And I believe that is what led to depression slowly over a period of years.
Well, what made you decide to give up the things that you loved in order to be with your husband? Was it directly spoken to you that that's what you needed to do, or did you just assume that's what you needed to
No,
do?
it wasn't directly spoken. I just thought that's what I should do. I thought he was a great man, and he is a good person. He had a great job, and I just thought we were going to live the fairy tale and live happily ever after. I
And
was
that was
young.
your idea of what a marriage is I have to completely stop being myself in order to be happy in this relationship.
Well, I was only 18 when I met him,
Oh my
so,
gosh.
and he was 8 years older than me. So, like
Yeah.
I said, I was young and naive still.
You said you were hospitalized 3 times. What were the reasons for those hospitalizations?
Each time I was manic. Like the first time, I had no clue what was going on. I didn't even know what bipolar was in 1995. And I was seeing things that weren't there. There were just thoughts coming to my head. I didn't understand them. My mother came up and she didn't understand what was going on. And finally, I just said, I need to go to the hospital. I don't understand what's happening to me.
Were you ever suicidal?
Um, yes, I would say I had one minor attempt after I left my husband. I got it in my head that my pills were placebos. So I decided I was going to prove it and take a whole bunch of them.
Oh, wow.
There were times when I was still married, I was driving home from work. I was working full time for a while. And I used to think about driving my car over an embankment. And then I thought, no, I can't hurt my kids, first of all, or I might be paralyzed for life. And that would be worse than being dead. I never did it. I don't think I would have ever seriously done it. I lived for my kids. I knew I had to show them a better life than I was living at the time.
So how was the cycle of depression and mania? How did that impact your children?
Oh, it was probably horrible for them. We don't talk about it much, but they would make me little cards or give me a hug when I was depressed. And, we really didn't understand much what was going on. And I didn't have the energy to get them the type of psychological help they probably needed at the time because I was so focused on myself. And when I left my husband, I had to leave my kids with him, of course, because I wasn't even sure I could take care of myself yet. I was still in that depressed state when I left, but I was hopeful that I would find a better life, a happier life than I'd been leading, and I could show my kids by example what life was supposed to be like.
How are your kids doing now?
Oh, they're great. They're 37 and 33. My son is 37. He has a fantastic job. My daughter loves her job. They went through some struggles, both of them, especially my daughter. But I'm very, very close to my daughter now and fairly close to my son.
So you mentioned the genetic component to it, right? Is there anybody in your family that had bipolar, and are you concerned for your kids that this might get triggered for them as well?
Oh, definitely, it's a concern. My paternal grandmother, she had a nervous breakdown, they called it, in the 1960s, okay? She went home and took some kind of pill for the rest of her life. I don't know what it was called or anything, but she managed. She wasn't a social person, But she worked after her husband died to help sustain herself financially. And like I said, she, had an okay life, I think. So yes, I would say she had bipolar disorder probably. It was probably called manic depressive illness it was called manic depressive illness back then. But other than her, I think she's the only one that I can think of in, generations past that I know of for sure that had something happen to her like this.
So you mentioned the placebo or the pills that you were taking and you thought they were placebos. So medication played a role in your treatment. Can you talk to us about what it took for you to be where you are now? What were the steps that you took for your healing? What role did therapy and medication play in that healing?
Well, with medication, I went off my drugs a year after my marriage ended. I thought, okay, the only reason I had this illness was because of my marriage. So I went off my medication, and that started this whole hypomania thing again with me because I wasn't taking anything. And that's when the two psychiatrists told me I'd never work full-time again. I had to quit my full-time job because my brain was fried. I couldn't think properly. I couldn't function at work. I'd been letting the company down for months. And when I quit my job, like I said, the psychiatrist said I'd never work full-time again. And that's when I knew I had a lot of work to do on myself if I was to truly have the kind of life I dreamed about. I was only 39. So I started taking my meds again. And for about 5 years, I was on and off medication. I tried natural therapies. That didn't work for me. But what I did during that time was do a lot of reading. And I had a social worker as well who really, really helped me see things differently. Even when I couldn't work, I did volunteer work to get out of the house and be with people. But therapy was big, especially cognitive behavioral therapy. That's when you change your thoughts from a negative thought to a positive one. And I did that by putting up Post-it notes around my apartment with little motivational sayings on them. Like with Deepak Chopra has a saying, you can believe the diagnosis, not the prognosis. And I clung to those words. I knew someday I would be able to work again and have the life I always dreamed about. And it took about 10 years of hard work, but I finally got there. About 15 years ago, I started working full-time again, or part-time first and then full-time. But during that time, I had cycles of mania where I would go on wild spending sprees and take holidays I couldn't afford. I was deeply in debt, and it was hard. It was a very difficult time in my life. But therapy definitely helped me. I looked forward to seeing my social worker every month. She'd talk to me, and they'd suggest things I could do, like deep breathing and relaxation exercise, meditation. There were so many things I did. I read a lot of books during that time. One of the ones I really liked was When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. I realized I'd been a people pleaser and I didn't want to be like that anymore. And another really good book was Boundaries. I had to learn who to let in my close circle of friends that were helping me or beneficial in my life. And, we all have people that don't have our best interests at heart. And, those people I learned to distance myself from.
What role did stress play in your triggers of having your depressive episodes or your manic episodes? Did you keep track of when I'm under a lot of stress, I'm more likely to have either one? Like, what role did that play for you?
Oh, stress led to depression. Like, negative stress led to depression more than mania. I remember one year telling my doctor I had 3 strikes against me. I had nothing meaningful to do during the day. I was deeply in debt, and I had no boyfriend, which I really wanted. It's really hard to get when you have that diagnosis. But I said, if I could solve one of those problems, things wouldn't be so bad. Now, he wanted me to take a pill for anxiety that time. And, I'd taken pills for anxiety many, many times over the years. But that day, something happened in my brain, and I said, no, that's the short-term fix. I need a long-term solution. So I sent a letter to a friend, call him a friend, he's a mentor. He's given me a lot of good advice over the years, and he told me that day, get out of the house, stop feeling sorry for myself. He gave me a good kick in the pants that I needed. And he said, talk to people, look at all the positives instead of the negatives. And like I said, I knew if I could solve one of those 3, money, boyfriend, or having something meaningful to do. So I chose to find something meaningful to do. I went to mental health drop-in centers, and very quickly I realized I was a lot further in my recovery than a lot of people there. When I started talking about my recovery from bipolar disorder, that I started in 2006, and I spoke for 2 years at mental health drop-in places. I've spoken at CAMH, which is the big place in Canada, Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. I've spoken at libraries, universities, Rotary clubs. I did 100 talks in 2 years. Wow. I never felt better. And my psychiatrist was just amazed. At the end of the 2 years, he told me, Lynn, even if you are to get sick again, you'll never lose all the confidence you gained. That was such a big boost to my self-esteem. And I got an award from a local mental health association during that time for the work I was doing in my community. I would have kept doing it, but I had to prove, first of all, to myself that I could work at a paying job again. Yeah. So that's when I went back to work part-time, a year later, full-time. I worked for somebody until 2016 full-time, and then I got downsized. After a couple jobs from hell, I thought, okay, I've got to make a life for myself. I started working as a virtual assistant 6 years ago, doing administrative tasks and bookkeeping for small business owners. And I still have a couple clients today, but I'm focusing right now on getting out and speaking again. I'm self-publishing a book called The F Book, the 7 F's to 7 F's to creating your fantastic future. While I was speaking, I discovered there were 7 words, all starting with the letter F, that contributed to my recovery. They are family, friends, fun, fitness, fulfillment, finances, and faith. One big thing that really helped in my recovery was I found out how to have fun again. I found a singles group in my local area. We went dancing, we played cards, we went whitewater rafting, we went camping, and I kept doing things that used to bring me joy until basically the chemicals changed in my brain. I know that's what happened. The chemicals change in your brain when you're depressed or manic. But I just kept doing the things over and over again that I like to do, and I believe that's how I got the chemicals to change in my brain to feeling good again, as well as taking medication. I still take medication to this day for bipolar.
Are you still in therapy as well?
No, I don't have any therapy. My therapy is my friends, my church family. I just don't feel I need it. And
well, you ended up getting over the finding purpose in your life. So you did that, and you ended up getting at it, or at least working to have financial resources again. What about the boyfriend? Did you ever find that boyfriend?
Not a steady one, no, believe me. I've been on many internet dating sites. But for, I would say 75% of people, as soon as you tell them you have bipolar, it's a deal breaker.
There's a lot of stigma around it, right?
Yeah, like I told a friend, well, somebody I consider a friend a few months ago, and, you know, he's a casual acquaintance type friend, but he was just, he treats me differently now, and I can feel it, and that's okay, you know? I just, he was just a friend. Like I said, we talked about maybe doing business together because he had his own home-based business. Like I said, people treat you differently as soon as they find out you have bipolar disorder, but I will not hide in shame. Never, ever, ever. I want to show people that in spite of the illness, you can still be happy, have a productive life.
I think there is a lot of stigma because people don't understand what that looks like, and they don't understand what that's going to feel like in terms of having a relationship. I interviewed somebody last year that the same thing, had a really difficult time finding people. And when she told her husband, he was the first one that said, so? She said, I have bipolar. And he said, so? And they've been together ever since. And he's her biggest supporter now, because he didn't see that as a huge obstacle to their relationship. What do you think needs to be said or communicated for people to understand that this isn't a debilitating illness if it's managed and you're actively working on it? Obviously, if somebody, for any mental illness, if somebody is diagnosed with anything and they're not taking it seriously and they're not taking care of it or managing it, then yeah, that can create a lot of problems in a relationship, right? But if you're actively managing it, you're seeking help, you're working on yourself, you're constantly improving, what would you want your potential partners to know about what it's like to date somebody with bipolar?
Well, 95% of the time, it would be like dating anybody else. It's that 5% of the time that's scary, because if I get hypomanic or manic, it's a problem in my brain, and I may say things I wouldn't normally say and do things I wouldn't normally do. Whereas with a physical illness, you get the flu or COVID, you're on the couch for a week or two, but you're not saying and doing strange things. I don't know if I could ever be in a relationship with anybody at this point in my life, just because I'm set in my ways. I'm 61.
So for you, because of your preference, you don't want to be in a relationship, but are you afraid that being in a relationship could trigger mania and that could push a relationship away?
Yes, that could definitely happen. I do have one male friend that said it wouldn't matter to him, but he's very independent and knows he never wants to get married again or live with anybody again. So it kind of works for us right now.
Okay. So you found something that works for you.
Yeah, I have found something that works. It's not an everyday thing or every week thing, but like I said, he believes in me. He always gives me good advice. I'm working on a website right now, so he gave me some advice about that last week. And yeah, he's very supportive.
When was your last manic episode?
My last manic episode, that would have been probably about 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I have to admit, I got hypomanic last December because I was cutting back on my meds, but it didn't get to mania. I wasn't spending money like crazy. I spent a little bit more, but not a lot. Once I think I hallucinated, and I just said, you know what? It doesn't matter. I got more important things to do today.
But that had to do with you messing with your medication, right?
That was because I was messing with my meds, yes. I watched the movie A Beautiful Mind last fall. Actually, I just rewatched it this week, and I said, you know what? If I hallucinate, it doesn't matter. I got better things to do.
Yeah, definitely. So now you said you're writing a book and you're doing a lot more talks. Can you share again? You said you had that the book with the 7 F's?
7 F's to creating your fantastic future. It'll be for sale hopefully the end of September. I wrote the original of it back in 2007 and 8 when I was doing my talks. And I also wrote a book years ago called My Journey Back to Myself. That book is specifically about how I learned to manage bipolar disorder.
Wow, that's amazing. And so what are you doing now? Are you still doing your talks and helping as many people as possible with your
I haven't got in-person talks booked yet. I just started reaching out to people in May. And basically, I'm going to launch a success coaching program in the fall. It's based on my F book. There'll be a workbook to go along with it. And I'm going to offer coaching either virtually or in person based on the 7 Fs, because I believe everybody needs those Fs in their life.
Definitely. No, you found a really great way to get yourself back on your healing journey, and then helping out other people is going to help you feel better as well. So
Yes.
looking back on your life, is there anything you'd like to tell your younger self about all this, your experience over the past 31 years?
Well, I guess, like I said before, don't give up what you're doing in your life for anybody else completely. Yes, you need to negotiate, but there needs to be give and take on two people's parts. Pay attention to signs. I believe the universe gives us signs. When I was married, I used to fall in love with songs that talked about running away and following my dreams. And it wasn't until our marriage ended, I knew what all those songs had been trying to tell me. Well, what would I tell my younger self? When in doubt, don't. I heard that expression on Oprah one day. So now if there's any doubt about anything that I'm doing, I don't do it until the doubt is past, that I know for sure that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Okay, well, that sounds good. If people wanted to reach you, are you on social media? Where can people find you?
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn under my own name. I'm working on my website right now. It's myjourneybacktomyself.ca or .com. You put in .com, it'll go to .ca. But it's my journey back to myself. Those words actually are very special. They came to me in a dream. I'd been waking up at 4:30 every morning for 3 weeks, and I got angry one day and I wrote in my journal, I said, okay, God, why am I waking up at 4:30 every day? If there's something you want me to do, make it abundantly clear. And that's exactly what I wrote in my journal. So that day for 3 hours, I drifted in and out of sleep. And when I woke up, those words, my journey back to myself, were going around in my head. I went and this was 1999, okay? I went and got paper, pens, pencils, and started writing my book from my journals that I've been keeping over the years. Journaling was a big benefit to me because I could get things down on paper that I didn't know how to verbalize. And that's how I think I got to the root of my problems, by writing things down. Things would come up and I'd look at it and say, where did that come from?
Journaling is incredible. I know it's very cliche to have a therapist constantly recommend journaling, but it's recommended so much because it works, right?
It does, definitely.
So much for taking the time to be here and share your experience. I mean, that's an incredible journey, and I'm glad that you're ahead of it. At least you have better control of it than you did when it first started, right? And so continue doing what you're doing. The help that you're giving all those people that are struggling is incredible.
Oh, thank you. I really feel like I'm in the driver's seat now. Like I said, when I went off my meds, I did it consciously over a period of a year or so, and I shouldn't do it again, but who knows? That hypomania can be a nice place to be, unfortunately.
Well, I like what you said, or at least what Deepak Chopra said. You can believe don't believe the diagnosis. You can believe the diagnosis, but not the prognosis. Is that how he said it?
Correct. Yeah, that's true for every illness. out there.
Right. I mean, I like the saying that genetics might load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. It's kind of
That's
the
right.
same thing, that we are in control of the severity of whatever we're experiencing. You might have a genetic disposition of it, but it doesn't mean it needs to be triggered. It doesn't mean it needs to escalate and get worse. We can do things about it. We can work on managing things if we actually commit to it. But a lot of people just either expect for a magic pill, or they expect for it to go away if they ignore it long enough. And we know with mental illness, the longer you neglect it, the longer you avoid it, the worse it gets. So the sooner you intervene, the more committed you are to your healing, the better you'll feel.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much again for having this conversation with me.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I hope you found this episode beneficial. Please share this episode with anyone you think could benefit from the information shared today. We all could use reminders to prioritize our mental health, so please don't hesitate to share this information that could help the people you care about. To learn more about Lynn, visit transforminganxiety.com/53. If you haven't already, you can show support for the Mental Health Break podcast by subscribing wherever you're tuning in from today. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or a 5-star rating, since that'll help others find the podcast. Subscribe today so you get notified when new episodes drop.